Let's go ahead and call this meeting to order, please.
Thank you, April. Welcome to the January 20th Planning Commission meeting. All members are present, or actually, let the record reflect that Commissioner Roberts is absent. And would you like to join me in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, everybody. Yeah, some boilerplate for you. Per the city's meeting rules and procedures, public comments are generally limited to 5 minutes or less time if a large number of speakers is anticipated or if approved by the chair. I think we're good. Speakers desiring answers to questions should direct them to the Planning Commission, and if relevant, the Commission may direct them to staff. Speakers can also follow up directly with staff during regular city business hours. Please file a speaker's card with the administrative secretary on the form provided at the back of the chambers. During this portion of the meeting, those in the council chambers are permitted to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Public comments for scheduled agenda items should wait until that time. Zoom participation during this general public comment period will not be accepted. Please note that the Commission's actions are final unless an appeal is filed with the city clerk within 10 calendar days. April, take it away.
Chairperson, we have one speaker card. Danny?
Hello, hello. Oh, there it is. Not that I need it, but it needs to be recorded. Okay. One hell of a year. And I'm talking about this one, not last. I was hoping our city manager would attend, with being the new guy and all. Oh, well. So why is this one going to be a hell of a year? I'll elaborate on the agenda item. Suffice to say, I'll wait to the agenda item. But for now, let's talk about a missed opportunity. Oakley may be getting a data center. Now, from this point on, although I may go down rabbit holes and with a dash of rambling, which is typically me anyway, I want to discuss why we missed this opportunity. And that stems from my history. I've built data centers. I've retrofitted. I've closed them down. I built one in El Paso, one in Arlington. The El Paso was from the ground up. They're what's considered hardened buildings. And the beautiful thing about hardened buildings is that you need on-site people to take care of everything from plumbing to the actual systems to upgrades, the whole shooting match. And building the infrastructure, of course, has to be upgraded. But more often than not, the state and the Fed will kick this stuff in. You think San Jose spent their own money to build the Google and the Apple and all that stuff? No. And then electricity. Yes, that is a big concern, but in Oakley, they don't have an independent electrical system. They're going to pull the same PG&E power that we are going to use. Our rates are going to go up, even though we don't reap any benefit from all whatsoever. Plus, when I built data centers, I'm talking about the early 2000s. So solar was a fantasy. Wind was a fantasy. Yet the actual building of one, and servers were this big. So imagine you having an iPhone 4 and then someone offers you an i17. That's how much it's changed over the decade, almost 2 decades. I follow it. I love it. I love what we call dead rooms. it would require, because it would be a buildup for us if it were on PA1, it would actually give us something for PA1, not a Taco Bell and mixed use housing. Although if we had mixed use housing, that would be great because then we would have people closer to the data center. But we're talking about MEP, mechanical, electrical, plumbing, those jobs. We're talking about general construction, those jobs. We're talking about infrastructure upgrade. We're talking about, if you know, it won't matter to you, but sonnet rings and mans. That would be investments from these businesses. And the beautiful thing is, whoever builds it up and lives in there, if they move, it's still there. Back when I was doing it, we called them pilots, where people would parse out pieces of data center, kind of like WeWorks, WeSit, whatever that one with companies renting spaces. And there will always be customers, especially now with the onset of, hey, AI and Bitcoin, just those two would be drawing a lot of attention to us. I honestly hope Oakley turns it down. I think we made a mistake. If they came to us and we didn't even think about it, we made a terrible mistake. Thank you.
At this time, we have no other speakers here in the chambers.
All right, thank you so much, April. Moving into the consent calendar. Our next item is the consent calendar. There's one set of minutes for the regular meeting of October 21, 2025. Is there any discussion or do I have a motion?
Motion to approve the consent calendar. I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Motion carries. There you go. Public hearings. We have a conditional use permit.
Just want to let the record show that I didn't vote on that because I wasn't here for.
Oh, okay. So
Through
that
the
was just
chair,
you
but
guys and an abstain.
Commissioner Johnson, did you watch the meeting? Because you can vote on it if you watched the meeting. Okay, so let's retake that vote, please, and get it on record on the mic, please.
Okay, yeah, all in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Abstain.
Motion carries. Thank you. I'm sorry about that. So moving on to public hearings, we have a conditional use permit to establish a 24-hour emergency veterinary care facility located at 5541 Lone Tree Way within the Lone Tree Plaza Commercial Center. And to give the staff report, we have Jennifer. Hi, Jennifer.
Thank you, Chair and members of the Commission. Tonight, we are here to consider an application for conditional use permit 25-011 to consider a 24-hour emergency vet clinic. The subject property is part of the Lone Tree Plaza Integrated Shopping Center, and the specific building is located at 5541 Lone Tree Way. The proposed tenant, VEG ER for Pets, would take over an approximately 5,148 square foot tenant space within the centrally located pad building. The property is located within the PA1 specific plan area and is zoned for regional commercial uses. As proposed, the vet would provide services to most small animals, including dogs and cats, as well as exotic pets such as reptiles, birds, and small mammals, as well as turtles, on a 24-hour basis, 7 days a week. They would employ approximately 8 to 10 employees on the premises per shift. As outlined in the staff report, and based on the submitted application, plans, and project description, staff believes that the project is consistent with the general plan and zoning designations and would qualify for a categorical exemption under CEQA. And with that, staff is recommending that the Planning Commission adopt Resolution 26-001, approving conditional use permit 25-011. And that concludes staff's report. I'm available for any questions you have tonight, as well as the applicant who has also joined us here in the audience. Thank you.
Hello, Jennifer. Do we have any other 24-hour veterinary emergency vets in Brentwood?
I am not aware of any others. I believe within the staff or within the project description from the applicant, they have done their due diligence and is their understanding that there is not.
That was my only question. Thank you.
Anyone else? No? No, I have no questions. Thank you. At this time, the public is permitted to address the Planning Commission. Remarks are limited to 5 minutes per person, except for the applicant, who will have 10 minutes. Does the applicant wish to address the commission?
Hi, good evening. I'm Jennifer Jeffers. I'm at Allen Atkins law firm in San Francisco. I'm here on behalf of Veg ER for Pets, or Veg. I'm also joined by Samantha Fishbone, Veg's Director of Real Estate here, so we'll be happy to answer questions after this, but I wanted to just thank you all first, the planning staff and commissioners, for your time and efforts and also preparation to get us here. As Ms. Hagan mentioned, we are here to discuss Veg's request for a conditional use permit to allow for 24/7 emergency veterinary clinic at 5541 Lone Tree Way. So we just wanted to give you a little bit of background about Veg so you knew what that was, also what they plan to do in this space, and then can answer questions. Next slide, please. Oh, thank you. All right, so a little bit about Veg. Veg has one single mission. It's to help people and their pets when they need it the most. The company was founded in 2014. It's the only nationwide emergency veterinary business. As the slide shows, there's more than 100 locations now across 34 states, including 16 open locations in California alone. There's a few things that separate Veg from other veterinary clinics. The first one is that Veg only performs emergency veterinary services. There's no vaccinations, no spaying or neutering, routine checkups, or boarding. Basically, it's an urgent care for pets. Secondly, during treatment, Veg does not separate people from their pets. Customers can choose to stay with their pets throughout the entirety of procedures, and Veg staff meets them where they are, even if that ends up being on the floor sometimes. All in all, as I mentioned, with the 100 locations and opening more every day, Veg is a very well-established operation that takes great care for their patients and customers while also maintaining harmony with surrounding uses. Next, please. So a much needed local serving use. Veg's use is a vital one for the community. As mentioned, it stays open 24 hours a day. It handles emergencies that can happen at any time. Staff are available 24 hours a day. There's usually 8 to 10 employees on site per shift in order to handle emergency situations when they arise. And the service is even more valuable because, as Commissioner Johnson noted and questioned whether there were other emergency 24-hour services in the area, there are not. This would be the first one. Most clinics in the city and surrounding areas close at around 5 to 6, or they're not open sometimes on weekends. Brentwood residents currently have to travel about 10 miles to go to Antioch for something that would be comparable. So this would bring a much needed service to the city in a central location that would be convenient for residences to access. Next slide, please. For the project site, as Ms. Hagan noted, this is a small accessory building located in the Lone Tree Plaza Shopping Center. The shopping center currently is home to a variety of uses, including retail shops, grocery stores, a gas station, restaurants, and a Petco. The area surrounding the property is predominantly commercial. There's also other large retail shopping centers to the north and south. To the east is the 4 freeway, and to the west is some residential across the road. There are also numerous businesses within the shopping center and near the property that open early in the morning or stay open late at night. Sometimes other ones operate 24 hours a day, including gas stations, coffee shops, and gyms. The suite that Veg is looking at is about 5,100 square feet. It's 5,148 of commercial space. It was previously occupied by a salon, and the proposed project would not involve any changes to the footprint, height, landscaping, or parking to the existing facilities. Next slide, please. And this gets a little bit into what it would do, and this is all relegated to the interior tenant improvements on the building. There's a few minor exterior modifications that would include like-for-like materials, but basically, as you can see in these slides, the build-out includes high-end finishes, custom cabinetry, Italian tile flooring, and the like. Veg has essentially figured out, because it's been such an experienced operator, how to eliminate noise and odor concerns from these types of businesses. For odors, they utilize impervious surfaces in their designs so that everything is easily cleaned. Additionally, they install a state-of-the-art HVAC system that circulates air at a higher than average rate, and all of the air that is exhausted in the building is first filtered, so odors are not an issue. Likewise, noise is also not an issue. All of Veg's operations occur indoors. There is nothing outside. Veg also installs high-quality sound bat installation and acoustical ceiling tiles to minimize any noise concerns. Unfortunately, also because so many of the animals that are coming in need emergency services, they're not usually in a position where they're making a lot of noise as it is. But to the extent that they do make any noise, the measures that are taken by Veg in the construction would eliminate noise concerns and impacts. I'll also just note here that the build out also includes installation of a whole suite of standard security features. So there's 24/7 video monitoring, a double door vestibule that requires staff to manually buzz in customers twice before they can enter. And then all medications that are there are stored in secure containers when not being used to treat the pets. Next, please. It's very hard to see, but here's a proposed floor plan, so you can kind of see that this is really optimized for emergency care. The majority of the clinic consists of large open concept treatment bays and space. There's also 4 private exam rooms and other specialty spaces, such as an x-ray room and a surgery room. The remaining space consists of restrooms, a staff break area, and storage. Next. So per the city's municipal code, the veterinary clinics without kennels are permitted on the property with a conditional use permit. Veg does not offer boarding or kenneling services. All animals that are present on site are receiving active emergency care and treatment under constant supervision. Overall, the proposed clinic will be a valuable addition to the city, especially considering that there are no other 24-hour emergency clinics within the city limits. The clinic will also be a good fit for the shopping center specifically because there's already a number of animal and service-oriented uses in the center. So, last slide, please. With that, I'll just conclude by saying, for the above reasons on the slides, and as we're happy to answer more questions, we respectfully request that you approve our application, and thank you for your time.
Yes, thank you. Does anybody on the commission have questions for the applicant?
I have one. Go ahead.
Oh, just one question.
Yeah.
Is this a franchise or is it all owned centrally by one corporation?
Yeah, it's all corporate. Do you want to speak to any more about that, or? No? Okay.
We'll actually need her to come up to the mic if we're going
I'm
to take
sorry.
comments. Thank you.
Hi, Samantha Fishbone, Director of Real Estate for Veg. So no, it is completely corporate. We do not do any franchising of any kind.
Commissioner Jones?
Yeah, thank you. Can you elaborate a little bit further on just how the late night arrivals, departures, things like that are handled?
Yeah, so on average, like 85% of the people that come to us are really more urgent care than emergency. So I'd say in any given hour, it's pretty fluid. You probably have 1 to 3 people in at a time. There's never a case of like 20, 30 people in there at once. It's pretty kind of flows pretty nicely. But when you arrive, there's a double glass door entry. So you should be buzzed in the first one and then buzz into the second one. That's security for both the doctors and the patients.
Gotcha. Thank you. And the average number of pets that are typically there at any given time?
I'd say 1 to 3. It
It's-
could
it's
be up
been
to
1 to
like
3.
maybe at a busy time, maybe up to 5. Otherwise, if there's more in there, they're usually under the care being treated after surgery.
Gotcha. Okay. And thank you for the HVAC just breakdown and understanding of that. So thank you.
Yeah, Chris?
Hi, thank you for the presentation. The one question I had was about biohazard disposal. Can you walk us through that?
We have a third party that comes and picks that up. a
Extracted
couple
through-
times a week, yep, through the back entryway.
So
And it's all
stored on-
disposed of properly.
Okay, so stored on site until the
Yes.
disposal. Okay, great, thank you.
And I have no questions for you. Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you.
April, do we have any public comment?
At this time, we have one speaker card in person. Danny? Just kidding. We have no speaker cards in person. Let's go ahead and go to Zoom. If you'd like to speak in Zoom, please raise your hand now. We have no speakers in Zoom.
Thank you so much. All right. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
Make a motion to close the public hearing?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. And discussion, I think I'll start on this end today.
Okay, no, thank you. So I mean, I think I'm prepared to support the item. I think, you know, it's located within an existing commercial center. It's consistent with the plan. I think it does provide a needed regional service, you know, to the point that the would, and I think this is something that would serve a need. So being that it, you know, it's not really expanding on the building footprint, everything's indoors. Parking noise, circulation impacts, I think that's minimal and manageable. So I think, you know, when you look at the whole scenario, I would be prepared to support the item. Thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
I don't have any comments about this at this time. I'm good.
Okay, and Vice Chair Brand?
Yeah, I want to echo what's been said here today. I think I looked it up, and I think the nearest one is it's the VCA over by BART in Antioch, and the only reason I really know that is I did have an emergency with my past pet now, and that was a few years ago, and I remember going through that experience thinking, man, I'm surprised we didn't have one in Brentwood, and I had to drive back and forth, and this is just wonderful to see that, and especially in that shopping center, we have a really wonderful diversity of economic choices, let's just call it.
Mhm.
And, you know, a facility like this, you know, I see so much benefit to the community, and it's just, yeah, so that's all I got. Thanks.
All right. For myself, yeah, I've been to the emergency vet over in Antioch as well on Sunset. It is a pretty good distance to have to go, especially if you want something done quickly. And have always been happy to go there. They're pretty good people over there, actually. But I'm glad to see somebody wanting to provide this service right in Brentwood. Nobody in Brentwood is going to be more than 4 miles from you, basically. And then there's good service for the people on the south and east end of Antioch as well. It would have to otherwise go over by the BART station. So I like that the dimension of 8 to 10 employees, that's jobs that we see. I like the location. It's in a place where people coming and going 24 hours a day I don't think is going to be any kind of a problem. There's just a Costco there and a freeway, and it's not bad. And I did appreciate really that I could see that there was thought in the floor plan to put like the employee area, conference room and things like that over in adjacent to the other business, the barber shop, so that if there is pet noise, it'll be farther over. I just think it's a really good project. I'm happy to see something coming into that space. It's been empty for a little while, and I'm feeling pretty favorable for it. Those are my comments. So I'm ready to hear a motion.
Sure. I'll make a motion to adopt resolution number 26-001, approving conditional use permit number 25-011, subject to certain findings and conditions.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Congratulations. Welcome to Brentwood. Okay, moving on to E2, a zoning text amendment, RZ 25-004 to Brentwood Municipal Code, Section 17.715, accessory dwelling units and junior accessory dwelling units in compliance with recent changes to state legislation. And we have a staff report from Sarah Eweiler, sorry. Been a while, Sarah.
No
Good to
problem.
see you. Thank
Good
you. Go
evening,
ahead.
Planning Commission. Thank you, Chairperson. Before you tonight is what is becoming your yearly legislative update on JADUs and ADUs to amend the city's municipal code section 17.715 to comply with the latest state legislation. This year, there are three main bills that affected the ADU and JADU regulations. Those bills are SB 543, AB 1154, AB 462. Many of those changes are more cleanup and clarification items. However, I'll go over these amendments on a high level on the next slide for you. A red line version of the current ADU ordinance is attached to your packet tonight in order to track the amendments required this go around. So starting with SB 543, which became effective in January of this year, it codified many of the state housing and community development department, also known as HCD guidelines. This legislation clarifies the city's review timeline for determination of a complete application to 15 days from the date of submittal of the application, and provides an appeal process for incomplete application determinations or denials. The city currently is required to submit their ADU ordinance to HCD for review and approval. This law adds that failure to submit a copy to HCD or failure to respond to their review comments will now result in an ordinance that is null and void. This law also clarifies that the definition of allowable square footage now specifies that it's based on interior livable space. Additional clarification was made to clarify that the quantity of JADUs and ADUs that are allowed on each property. And then the law clarified that utility connection requirements, impact fees, and capacity charges are not, also cannot be applied to JADUs, which is consistent with the current requirements for ADUs. Lastly, the law exempts JADUs and ADUs that are less than 500 square feet from school district fees and clarifies that fire sprinklers cannot be required for JADUs if the main home is not fire sprinklered. Next, we have AB 1154, which also became effective on January 1st of 2026. This law revises the owner occupancy requirement for JADUs to now only apply when a JADU shares sanitation facilities with a single-family dwelling. This law also prohibits JADUs from being rented for less than 30 days at a time. And lastly, you have AB 462, which went into effect immediately, which was October 10th of 2025, which relaxed the issuance of certificates of occupancy under certain conditions for an ADU in disaster-affected areas that are subject to subject to a state of emergency on or after February 1st of 2025. There were a few additional modifications to our ordinance that were really, again, made to ensure that we were compliant with state legislation. So one cleanup clarified that the review period for a pre-approved ADU is specifically for that of detached ADUs only. The other clarification was that the existing law prohibits a local agency from establishing size requirements for ADUs based on percentages of the primary dwelling. So clarification language was added to ensure that at least an 800 square foot attached ADU must be allowed even if it exceeds 50% of the square footage of the existing home. So given that the city's ordinance is required to be updated in order to comply with state legislation, staff recommends that the Planning Commission adopt resolution number 26-002, recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance approving the zoning text amendment RZ 25-004 to amend the Brentwood Municipal Code section 17.715 for ADUs and JADUs in compliance with state planning law. The commission's recommendation will be forwarded to city council for their final action. I'm available for any questions, as is Erin, who we have from Goldfarb and Littman. She's available on Zoom if needed for clarifying questions. Thank you.
And thank you, Sarah. Do we have any clarifying questions for Sarah?
Just to, I think more for those that are watching, but just to confirm, these amendments are essentially intended to bring our municipal code into alignment with the current state ADU, JADU laws, right? There's no local policy or anything like that, no new local policy that's being put into place.
Correct. We're just amending our current, I guess you would call it local policy in order to comply with the state, but we're required to do so.
Yeah, thank you.
Commissioner Johnson?
And our role is to just recommend. We're not the full authority on this. We're just recommending to the.
Correct. The city council makes the final determination.
Okay, thank you.
Vice Chair Graham?
I mean, I have a lot of questions, but I think we'll wait until we get through this, but thank you.
Yeah, I have some. First of all, my first question is, again, we seem to be getting these quite frequently every year, where we have to rewrite the Brentwood Municipal Code to conform to just a almost tsunami some days of state laws, just basically taking away planning and hemming us in a little bit more and more. And just for the benefit of the public who's watching this tonight, this is just another of many exercises we've had to do where your city planning staff, your planning commission, and your city council are losing the ability to create the city that you want. And instead, we're being required to create the city that the state imagines that every single city in the state should be like, without regard to any kind of individual considerations for individual cities. So let's see. The thing about the fire sprinklers, I think, I won't ask a question about that. The 15-day review, this is just a review just to see if the application is complete. Is that correct?
Correct. Completeness determination.
And did we used to have our own deadline for that particular step?
Previously, it was subject to just the standard Permit Streamlining Act, which is 30 days. So now the state has basically codified a process for ADUs, which is more streamlined, so the 15 days now.
I see. And do you think that cutting another 2 weeks out of the process is going to create more ADUs? Or, I mean, are ADUs usually fairly urgent that they have to be built? Whereas I don't understand why the state is asking us to do that.
Sure. I mean, it's not necessarily going to change any of our review timelines. The city previously, for any sort of addition, ADU modification, any kind of building permit for residential projects are concerned, were typically reviewed within 2 weeks. So it's complying with our current process that we currently follow. So I don't necessarily see an impact to us currently as far as the workload and things like that is concerned.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, I do notice that in a lot of these new rules that they keep passing, there are shortened deadlines, and I'm concerned that there will be a cumulative effect over time where, I mean, there's no additional staffing that is provided by the state or any kind of funding. It's just the city is just required to deal with the compressed workload. And if we have, a lot of shortened mandated things that staff must review, not only this one, but others that have come before it, then it seems to me like staff would be put into a position where it'd be difficult sometimes without having to go into overtime or, putting aside other things that the city needs to do just to get done with things that the state has compressed onto you. And So I just want you to know that we're aware of that, and we appreciate that this is a burden for staff, and basically it's an unfunded mandate. Can you tell me a little bit more about the removal of occupancy requirement? I think it's down kind of the last thing on the page.
Are you the owner occupancy requirement? Is that what you said?
The owner occupancy.
Sure. So previously there was an owner occupancy requirement for JADUs that the owner had to live in either the main home or the JADU. That is now done away with. The only time we can require that is if the JADU shares any sanitation facilities with the main home, then there has to be a owner occupancy requirement.
And do you recall why there was originally an owner occupancy requirement? What was the purpose of that?
My understanding, and we can clarify if with outside legal counsel or our attorneys here if needed, but my understanding is just to ensure it wasn't that all of them weren't rented out. It wasn't just like a rental property with, 3 potentially rentals on it, that the property owner lived on site, was able to kind of manage and make it more of like a residential community than just a rental property.
And so they've just kind of done away with that benefit, and now they can all just be rentals, as corporate owned. All right, well, thank you so much. I'm sorry for all the questions.
No problem.
Okay, did I do the motion to close the public hearing? Oh, I got to do public speakers. Sorry, we were doing questions. I got out of space. It's been 3 months, sorry. April, go ahead with public comment. Thank you.
We have the one speaker card, Danny.
Hello. Yeah, the whole need to put it on the record thing. Well, like I said before, boy, one hell of a year, and I am referring to this year. And I hate reading from here, but I want to make sure I don't put any cuss words in my diatribe here. The ridiculous statutes and laws that are putting us in a spot where we might as well rubber stamp build-outs. We got screwed with our slow walk, God, I want to swear so bad, of HCD proposals. Now, normally I will call out the usual suspects, but recent events with BPD got me thinking. What if staff was ordered, hinted, and or intimidated by leadership to slow walk, misstate, pretty much anything for us to miss our opportunity to keep some control? Where does this lay the blame? Well, our former city manager, otherwise known as the $250,000 man, and our soon-to-be soon-to-be leaving current city attorney. But coulda, woulda, shoulda does nothing for where we are now, except, as I suggested about Bridlegate, we hold ADU, JDAU, all the ADU initials, hold their feet to the fire. Except there is no or else. I read the usual gibberish designed to put money in the pockets of homeowners and developers. There are guardrails to keep some semblance of our city design, but there aren't any or else's. What if there's overparking on the streets? Sure, the city can cite, but will they? Because you need people to actually do it. And a lot of times, you generally know who the snitches are. So they won't be motivated to do anything. People rarely will follow the rules such as appropriate parking, number of parks, and all that, unless there are reasons to follow the rules. The same thing applies to the whole Airbnb avoidance. How's this going to be tracked? If a homeowner rents his residence, what prevents them doing so with many apartments? I mean, it's said, it's clearly stated, but what's the or else? How can you enforce it? And if you can enforce it, then what are the punishments? Because, let me jump to that place. Well, before I do that, do ADUs go through planning? I'm not quite sure. I think it may have been answered. But if they don't, how can it be regulated to meet the city plan? I suggest forwarding this agenda item until violations are clearly defined. I didn't see in any of the zoning, whether from city or state, about or else. This implies we can consider creating enforcement of the guardrails. The guardrails are there, but we don't have any enforcement mechanisms, and we can't come up with them tonight. Hopefully, Brittany can do her job and see if there are options. We've had enough advice from our soon-to-be booted, our outgoing city attorney. Her latest contributions to said BPD situation leads me to believe that she was derelict in her duties with HCD. Now it's freestyle. We can't help what is coming down from the state. Everything's implied that we have no choice but to sign this. I don't think so. I think because we have guardrails that are written but no enforcement in place, should give us the opportunity to at least find out if we can enforce the guardrails. I don't see anything in the document that says we can't. Thank you.
And anybody on Zoom?
There's no other speakers here in person, so let's go to Zoom. If you'd like to speak, please raise your hand. We have no speakers in Zoom.
Thank you. Do I have a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
Second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Before we go on, there was a question from the audience about do ADUs go through planning? And I think that's kind of an interesting question. Would you like to address that, Sarah?
Sure, thank you. Planning reviews the building permit, but it's only required to have, it's ministerially approved now, so only a building permit. But again, that is routed to planning for review and approval for consistency with our zoning ordinance and the state legislation. So we are checking those boxes when we're reviewing them.
And prior to some of these state legislative bills that have come through in the last, several years, there used to be more involvement, or is it about the same?
It was very similar before. We had, trying to remember now, if we had an administrative process, I don't think we issued any separate approvals for ADUs, at least not as long as I've been here. Maybe Eric can clarify, but it's always been fairly administrative.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, and through the chair. For the last several years, let's call it 10 years, it's been basically an administrative process. But I do know that when I started here back in the early 2000s, we actually required conditional use permits for, we called them at the time, secondary dwelling units or granny units. So if you look back in the files for the city, say 2000 to 2010, you will find old use permits for certain secondary units. I don't know how many we processed in total, but at some point that changed, and we had to change it because of the state laws that were passed.
All right, thank you. So that's, yeah, there you go. We used to be able to at least permit the things. All right. Is there any discussion by the commission? I think I'll continue starting on my right.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, look, I remember when I went through the process of interviewing for the Planning Commission, Councilmember Orlemans asked me if I would follow the law. if, even if I didn't necessarily agree with it. And I said I would. So tonight, I think, that's kind of one of those cases where I'm going to demonstrate that. But I will say that, this is unfortunate. This is not a partnership when it comes to working with the state, when we're basically being told that, we're essentially reduced to just administering housing policy rather than, shaping it. I just think that's bad governance. I don't like it. But unfortunately, I think our role tonight isn't to debate state law. It's our job to make sure that we're bringing, our code into compliance. So, I'll support this item on that basis. But like I also said when I went through the interview process, that I would say what I think. And so I'm doing that. So I'll leave it at that.
Thank you, Commissioner Jones. Commissioner Johnson.
I just have a quick question, Sarah. Somebody from the audience, well, not somebody, Danny was talking about consequences. So just out of curiosity, I know that, all of these things, that's there. Is there any possibility for consequences, or that, just enlighten me on that?
Do you mind defining what you mean by consequences?
Well,
like if they don't if they don't meet the requirements?
If they don't meet the requirements, right now it's like approved almost when they come before the planning department. So if they don't meet it, what happens?
Right. So we can write a letter of denial if they don't meet the requirements and explain why and why they don't meet and what their process is to meet them. So if they need to, let's say, reduce or increase the setback, say they only have a 3-foot setback and they're required to have 4, we can let them know that. So we have to outline everything as far as where they're not compliant with the current legislation and provide them potentially an opportunity to correct it. But we can deny it if they don't meet those requirements.
Okay.
Does that help?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. I mean, it is. I've seen my fair share of these things come before the Planning Commission over the couple of years that I've been on it, and it is unfortunate. I really don't like when we have no flexibility. That's whether we're here locally and we have no flexibility, or we're trying to enforce no flexibility, or the state is trying to enforce no flexibility. I wish they would give us goals and say, hey, your goal is to increase housing by X%, and you can figure out how to do it. But with no flexibility, whether it be in the city level or the state level, it doesn't do us any good. So I always kind of defer not to having computers do the work for us or making us robots, and we just comply. So it's unfortunate. I wish there was a way to do it and then, and make some sense, but that's my opinion. I don't have any further comments.
Thank you, Commissioner Johnson. Vice Chair Brand?
Yeah, so echoing a lot of what's being said here today, we're sort of no strangers on this commission as far as playing tug of war with the state of California, but always seeming to be losing our anchor at the back on the Brentwood side. That being said, I went through this pretty extensively as far as all the bills and a lot of the content in the staff report, which was fantastic. Thank you, by the way. I'll try to keep this as short as I can. So I know in here, the first thing I'll talk about is in this, I know it clarifies a bit about the application of objective design standards as it relates to ADUs specifically, but not JADUs as far as I'm aware, right?
Typically, JADUs are part of the existing home already, like a conversion of a bedroom or a conversion of maybe a portion of the garage. So you're not typically dealing with design standards. You're just converting interior space, if that makes sense. Yeah.
Right. I guess what I'm asking is, it seems as though there's two categories of ADUs. One is governed by our ODS, and then the other half, another chunk of them are not.
They all are required to meet the same standards as far as setbacks, height, the very minimal design standards that we have, but they all, I mean, I guess if you're trying to say JADUs aren't called out in there, that's because the JADUs are part of the existing home, or so it would be the existing single-family home and just conversion of that space. So not necessarily changing of the exterior design or adding any new space. So you wouldn't need to really review for compliance with design, but ADUs are required to comply with very minimal objective design standards, not our full residential objective design standards. We can't apply all of those.
Right, and is there a simplified document available to the public as far as that's concerned? I don't know how you describe it, the simplified or
Sure. We have
truncated.
a checklist of required materials for ADUs, so we can update that based on this new legislation. There's not a whole lot of changes that are occurring. It's more cleanup on this round. So, but we do have like informational handouts, but not necessarily like a set of design guidelines. They're just informational handouts that we have.
Okay, and I know as you described the check question, has to be fulfilled within 15 days. Now, the appeal process, it sounds as though it's for denials only. Is there an appeal process for someone who believes, if I'm my neighbor, for example, or someone down the street has an ADU and I don't believe it's consistent, do I have recourse to be able to appeal the decision made by a ministerial approval?
So the appeal process is new this round of legislation, and it's only for the completeness determination. So if let's say we get an ADU application and their height is double the height that it's allowed, so we can let them know, hey, your application's not complete, your height is you're too tall, you are above the regulations, and you need to reduce it to X to comply. They can appeal that determination and say, no, we believe we do comply because of XYZ. Or the other process is you can appeal the denial if we say, hey, like you haven't met these things, we cannot approve you because your height's too tall. We've told you the setbacks don't meet, XYZ. You can appeal that determination saying we don't agree with that as well. But it's only denial of the actual an appeal of the denial or appeal of the determination of completeness or not. And that's only in an appeal that can be filed by the applicant themselves. So the neighbors, nobody else has the ability to file that. It would only be of the applicant.
Right, so it's kind of a one-way street as far as the applicant, well, the appeal process, which is extremely unusual. It says also, so pre-approved plans exist within for Brentwood for ADUs. So if I was an applicant, I wanted an ADU, I could select amongst a series of pre-approved plans to expedite the process. Is that?
So we were required, I believe it was last year, to have a process for designers or developers to apply for a set pre-approved design. So they could submit to us 5 designs that they would say, hey, we can offer these and we want to go through your process to become pre-approved so that residents could use these. We haven't had anybody actually apply to get a design pre-approved. So we actually don't have any like on file to be like, hey, these are the ones, but we had to allow for a process for somebody to submit for a pre-approved design that we could consider and residents could use in the future. But at this point, we don't have any on file.
I got it, okay. Thank you. Moving down, so the big one that I wanted to talk about is the impact fees. Now, I know a lot of this, but particularly 543, goes at length about once you hit a certain threshold or a maximum threshold, you no longer have to incur types of developer fees, school fees, things of this nature. We can't, we talked about this last, oh gosh, I don't remember. Well, that was like 2 years ago, where there's no recourse to say, well, we have an increase in population in this particular area via some type of ADU, an increase in density. How do you financially support, those social systems that surround us fiscally? And this certainly is a backdoor to be able to implement that. My understanding is that anything below 500 square feet as an ADU is not, does not require, the school district doesn't have to ask for a school fee. Is that right?
Correct. They actually cannot ask for a school fee under 500 or less.
Right, and we're pretty aware, BUSD and Liberty Union, both, they solicit that development fee right now for ADUs above 500 square feet?
Correct. Our building division requires the applicant to submit approval from the school district, or it's basically a receipt of the fees being paid before we issue a building permit for the permits that it applies to.
Right, okay. So that leads me to my next thing is, it seems as though, and I'd like clarification maybe from assigned counsel, can minimum and maximum unit sizes be established for ADUs? And supposedly the answer is yes. A local government may, by ordinance, establish minimum and maximum unit sizes requirements both for attached and detached ADUs. Now, that threshold basically says that, we say, I think you said in the presentation, we can't control that threshold as it relates to the primary dwelling unit. So up to 800 square feet or 50%, was it 50%? I don't want to speak. And 1,200 square feet for a new detached ADU and up to 50% of the floor area of existing primary dwelling and attached ADU. Now that would give us the option to be able to essentially say, we can put a lower limit, as far as I'm aware, and I'd like to get feedback on this, is we could put a lower limit on the minimum square footage that an ADU is built so that an ADU would essentially incur these fees back to us. So if we do nothing, it basically says, well, they can build, anywhere from 150 to 490 or 500 square feet, and then there's no fee. And then for the developer fee, that's over 750, right? I think 700 square,
Correct.
750 square feet.
Yeah.
Right, so if we said, what if we say ADUs have to be a minimum of 751 square feet? And at that point, we supposedly we can do that. So I'd love some feedback on that as far as from, well, I guess either council.
I can jump in. Good evening. So to the question regarding minimum size, there is a limit. So you'd have to allow an efficiency unit, which I believe is 150 square feet. So that wouldn't really address the goal of having a cap at 750 or 500 square feet.
Right, the efficiency unit has different requirements. It's similar, gosh, there was another name for it. Sorry, I'm blanking on it, but there's a different definition for an efficiency unit, correct?
Yes.
It's like a single room with, I can't remember if it has a bathroom or not, as opposed to what probably we offered to the public as far as one of those fancy ones that, you can lower into your backyard via a crane, which is, 2 bathrooms or 2 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms and a patio, something like that. So I guess I would like to open this discussion to say, well, for a traditional ADU, based off of the state's definition, I suggest that we be very clear to council at least that we believe that it's important that we have a minimum square footage rating so that, we can't just, we do allow an efficiency unit, but my guess is that most people that would want to live in a unit that isn't attached to, we'll call it local family or friends, let's say it's an independently rented unit, it would only make sense to live in a nicer place. And so I would suggest that we create a bottom threshold for that. So that's one area here I'd like to address. Moving on to the California Building Code also allows local agencies to adopt amendments, additions, or deletions to the provisions of the CBC which are reasonably necessary and are more restrictive than the CBC standards. So do we have specifics within the current, sorry, I want to reword that. What areas of opportunity do we have with respect to ADU building code or just building code in general to sort of give us a chance based off of the way that these new bills are written to address? And I know they probably don't have an answer right here, but have we done even a cursory analysis of the CBC to see if, California Building Code, sorry, to see if there are opportunities for us? I know they pushed, for example, this, what did they call it? The interior livable space is the new definition for, inside square footage, because cities were counting the measurement to the exterior wall. And so you can't do that. You have to measure it from the inside of the wall. So it's all this silly song and dance of we're going to split hairs. So it's only fair that municipalities should be able to split hairs too. And so I would like to at least to see what opportunities we have there. I mean, I haven't done that level of research, but I would gather that there is some opportunity there for us to be more stringent and find a way to be a lot more, we'll call it aggressive with our treatment of some of these new bills. All right, I'm getting there. The parking aspect, I know there's 6 points in the parking. It says stuff about ADU, it's waived. The requirement for parking is waived if it's within a half a mile of public transit in a historically significant district. Let's see, when there's a car share vehicle within a block of the ADU. Do we have like a heat map or anything with the city that says like, okay, if you overlay all of these available areas based off of like, bus stops and, maybe the downtown area or any other historically, significant districts, to see like this is genuinely how much this is affecting this area as far as parking, and which areas residents should be prepared to encounter a potential increase in parking that cannot be regulated by the city? That's a big question.
We don't have a heat map, I can tell you that. We haven't gone into that level of analysis. And quite honestly, and I understand what the rationale, but the state does not care. That's the bottom line. And we have regular calls with these folks and webinars, and it's just every year their goal is basically to make these things easier for the homeowners to build. And that splitting hair thing that you talked about earlier, my guess is, and I don't know this for sure, but my guess is that these laws get tweaked every year because of situations that come up that they hear about. Oh, we got to fine tune it even more, right? Which then makes the cities have to fine tune it as well. It's crazy.
I completely agree. And I can't sit here in good conscience and do nothing. Because what are we doing here? If we're just going to sit here and say yes, it's like there's no point. Most of these things are going ministerial anyway. So why not exercise a little bit more discretion when it comes to what options do we have? There's no appeal process for a ministerial review. That would be fun. I go to get convicted and I can't appeal my case. It's like it says somewhere in the Constitution that's not okay. So moving on. So let's see, minimum square footage. Even stuff like solar systems required for the new constructed ADUs. So if I'm a homeowner and I have a new constructed ADU and the primary residence doesn't have a solar, how do I create unique utility requirements for a solar system? I'd have to run an inverter different than the rest of the other house does. And it says that there's no requirement that you have to run independent utilities from the ADU to the primary residence. So some of this stuff doesn't even make sense as far as, in a practical world. The independent, how do you interpret the word independent? What I also recommend is that we have some sort of minimum standard for what I would call environmental concerns. So this is stuff like, should we be able to require some type of central air system and HVAC? We've gone through the last several years, at least since I've lived here, where last week it's been 35 in the mornings. And then we get to August and it's 110. Is there a minimum standard that we should say that, most all of the new homes that we build have those types of systems? Why don't we require that of ADUs? I believe we have the ability to have a little flexibility there. Let's see, we talked about design review, like I say. So those, all in short, these are my first pass suggestions, and I'd love to get some feedback as well as any other. I invite other spitballing to see what we can do here and now, so that we can put our hand on a Bible and say we did our best.
Through the chair, I just wanted to throw this out there as well, and I don't want to sway the conversation and the ultimate recommendation, but state law also requires the city to, once the ordinance is adopted, to send it to the state for their own review. And I remember I did that a couple years ago. I think it was in either 23 or 24, and you send it off to this online portal or email, and it just sort of disappears, right? And I never heard back. And I'm thinking, that's great. The ordinance is adopted, everything's okay. Well, the last time I think it was March of last year, did the same thing. Didn't hear anything. So, same thing, hey, we're good, right? In October, HCD came back and said, hey, we reviewed your ordinance and we have some concerns about it. So I'm just letting you know that we're going to be doing that again because we're required to. So however the ordinance gets tweaked, we just need to be sensitive to the fact that we're basically implementing the state law, putting our own little twist on it that the state may have a problem with, and come back and say, you got to change it anyways. It's a crazy process, but it's like a check and a balance. And you don't always know if they're going to agree, and it could be 9 months later, it could be 2 years later, and they're going to raise a flag and go, you didn't do this right. So just throwing it out there.
Chair, if I may also add quickly, the state also last year imposed a new law under AB 130 that does limit local jurisdictions' ability to enforce certain California Building Code amendments relating to residential uses with certain exceptions. So I just wanted to put that out there as well.
And I take it HCD doesn't impose any kind of a 15-day time limit on themselves. Yeah. All right. Thank you, Vice Chair Brandt. Let's talk about fire sprinklers for a minute. When I moved to Brentwood and we were shopping for houses out here, I noticed that most of the houses that I looked at had sprinklers, and most of the houses were in the newer sections of Brentwood where we were looking. And I talked to my realtor, also used to sit in this chair, and asked him, boy, it's nice. They all have sprinklers that we're looking at. And he says, well, it's required since I forget how long ago it was required in Brentwood that all new houses have sprinklers. But there was a time when they didn't. So there are houses in Brentwood that don't have sprinklers. And it's just a matter, the reason why there's houses in Brentwood that don't have sprinklers is they were built before they were required. It's only a matter of what date the house was built on. That's the only reason why they are not required or they are required, as far as I know. This is just as far as I know. I'm not speaking to the law or anything, but my understanding is, yeah, you see a house that's got fire sprinklers, it was built after a certain date. And you see a house that doesn't, it was kind of built before a certain date. And so we have item K1 here. Fire sprinklers shall be required in ADUs and JADUs only where they are also required for the primary dwelling unit. And it just seems to me like, well, that doesn't necessarily make a lot of sense, because if you're building so the JADU addition I can see, but if you're just building an unattached ADU, fire sprinklers, they just water. The unit's got to have water anyway, so it's not like you're having to have the house all rewired for utilities. It's just that if you're in an older section of town where, you know, maybe somebody who's challenged in affordability would be forced to live. In other words, you know, basically the effect, not the intention, but the effect is that, yeah, if you're kind of poor, you can burn. That's how that works, right? It's not, I'm saying it's not an intended consequence, but it's a consequence of not understanding the local situation in Brentwood. And that's why I'm saying these state laws, like this one that we're discussing tonight, are written with no consideration for the individual city, what the circumstance is in that city. This is where your local officials would know. I would be able to go, you know, if I was trying to make a decision on something, I could come to Eric, who has a long memory of what has transpired in this city, and find out more about it. Or I could talk to the residents who have lived here for a long time. We do have some people that have been living in Brentwood for a very long time. And find out and make decisions based on situations locally. And I always think that local government should have some agency. I just think that in the sense that, you know, the federal government can be a little bit tough sometimes on the states. I think the states sometimes can be a little bit tough on the counties, and the counties can be tough on the cities. The state in this case is being really tough on the cities, taking away all of our flexibility with something like this. And again, like I said, I'm sure they're not sitting up in Sacramento going, oh, well, poor people can burn. But that's what they're enacting. You know, they just aren't thinking about it. They don't have any perspective on it. They're not planners. They're just, basically, they're just politicians. And so I think it's important. I think it's important that we talk about this. I heard a public comment earlier about why the city of Brentwood doesn't challenge these things. Well, I am aware that these things are being challenged in court. I believe it's going to the Supreme Court. It's not us, but it is a city in California. And so it'd be redundant for the city of Brentwood to try to tackle it. We're not a rich city, and the cities that are doing this are better positioned. But I certainly am interested in the outcome of that. If people are interested, there are people that are doing citizen movements like our Neighborhood Voices that are trying to get a ballot measure, but that requires like 1 million signatures, petition signatures. And that costs money, you know, and there's not anybody that's got that kind of money that is interested in helping, because basically the people with a lot of money are the people that are benefiting from these things. So having said all that, I want to cycle back to what Commissioner Jones said. We do have a responsibility to always follow the law. And up here, we always follow the law. And I know that we've been challenged on that, even by council members, but the fact is we always follow the law here. And so that is my intent tonight, is to follow the law. But I did appreciate having the opportunity once again to speak to whoever might be listening out in the public. If you care about what happens in your city, if you believe that your city should have the right established in 1926 by the Supreme Court, that local zoning is a valid function of a city. And if you feel like that's being taken away from you, if you're not happy with the excessive growth that you see, if you see it as excessive growth or excessive traffic, all the comments that I see online, a lot of people attacking the city staff, city council for a lot of growth that we genuinely cannot control. And I appreciate the public doesn't fully appreciate that, but you know, we're just getting hammered. And so having said all that, is there any more discussion?
I just have one thing that I may add, if I may. So the vice chair mentioned about this 750-foot deal. I just want to ask a question because we asked the attorney, but I don't know that she had a full opportunity to explore that. So I just wanted to maybe get just hear her out on this going to 750, above 750. Not that I would say that we do it here tonight, but maybe we can do it separately. Like, I guess the question, what I'm asking is, can we vote for this, right? But then bring whether we raise the ADU square footage to 750 up at a later date?
I think it has to be done
Yeah.
through the ordinance.
Oh, sorry, was the question for me?
I believe yes. If you could answer that would be great.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. So the definition of ADUs does include efficiency units, and the statute is clear that the minimum size of an ADU has to permit an efficiency unit. So I understand that efficiency units can seem different from an ADU, but it is encompassed in that definition. So 150 square foot ADU is the minimum size allowed under the statute.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And before we go to a motion, I'd like to cycle back to Vice Chair Brand. I just jotted down notes. I think you had about 4 suggestions for amendments. I'm not sure if we can make these amendments tonight, but would you be satisfied to talk about these as upcoming items when we get to suggestions for new items?
It only seems applicable to divorce the two in a sense, because I will fully acknowledge that, yes, we have a homework assignment here tonight, and it's very much laid out in front of us, and it's a yes/no question, but you know. I'm certainly open to it, and I appreciate the clarification that might be a more appropriate means of pursuing that type of shift in our municipal code or such, or whatever needle that we can thread through this web of confusion from Sacramento. So yeah, I will happily take that.
All right. With all of that discussion, I guess we're ready for a motion.
Through the chair really quick, I just wanted to clarify, if you don't mind, one thing in regards to the fire sprinklers, since I know we had a discussion about that. City of Brentwood actually required them much earlier in our building code than the state required. I was talking with our building official regarding this, and we adopted our own changes to the building code to request fire sprinklers back in the early 2000s, when they weren't required until like 2013, I believe, by the building code. So we're in a little bit of a better situation than other cities because we do have, we had that in place prior. So I just wanted to say that, just because we had made that finding previously, that we were able to require them earlier on.
Thank you. Yeah, certainly. Still early 2000s, there were already, I think, 20,000 people living here in 2000. So there are some houses, and especially in the older, poorer parts of town, which was my concern. As just the idea is that some of the more old properties that are more likely to be needed to provide affordable housing to people who are genuinely poor are going to be the ones that are going to be left out, as far as I'm concerned. It's neither here nor there. I think
Through the chair, sorry. But that is a fantastic example of how a more stringent building code, at least from a local municipality, could positively influence the future, maybe not this moment, but, when the Planning Commission in 2046 convenes and has to look back at this meeting, hopefully we could have done something to make their job a little bit easier. So I'll leave it at that, sorry.
Thank you, that's much appreciated. All right, with that, I'll hear more discussion or a motion.
Not to just keep sort of beating a dead horse here on this, but like just going back to what Vice Chair Brand was saying, and I don't disagree, with anything that's being brought up. And I think the thing that we have to be careful of as a commission is, we can spend time trying to find, loopholes and ways to get past whatever the state is trying to do. But, Eric, you brought up a point earlier that this gets submitted to the state looks at it. If they see anything they don't like, they just come back and they tighten it even more, right? So my concern, I guess, is I think, the solution really lies more at the ballot box, right? It doesn't necessarily align through this commission trying to find ways to get around stuff. We have to look at the people that are representing us, and we have to ask ourselves, and I'm talking about myself as well as folks in Brentwood, right? Vote that way. But we have representatives that are voting yes on these initiatives, right? So I think we have to think about that and, remember that, as long as you have the people that continue to vote yes on this, these are the problems that we're going to continue to come across. So, I don't want to go down a rabbit hole with that type of conversation, but I bring that up more under the case of, we can spend time trying to dig around and find ways to get around some of these things. But I think, the point that Eric made earlier, that I think it says a lot, that is, as long as the folks that are continuing to vote yes, continue to represent us, we're going to have a problem. And so I would just encourage anyone that's listening, looking at things like our neighborhood voices, that, organizations like that, to just truly understand who it is that's representing you, and just ask yourself, is that the person that you want? And maybe we can get some different votes, the next time around. So I wanted to bring that up because I do get passionate around these things. This is stuff that is very concerning to me when you have, a state legislator that's telling a city what they can and cannot do. I mean, I just think that's wrong, and we have to remember that. So I would just say for anyone listening, just remember that when you go to the ballot box, find out who's representing you, and do they align with what it is that you want. So leave it at that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Jones. I agree. Sacramento appears to be playing a game of whack-a-mole, and unfortunately, we are the moles to be whacked, the people of Brentwood and your elected representatives. With that, do we have a motion? Anybody want?
Yeah, as set forth in the staff report, I make a motion to adopt resolution number 26-002, recommending that the City Council adopt an ordinance approving a zoning text amendment RZ 25-004 to amend section 17.715 of the Brentwood Municipal Code for accessory dwelling units, ADUs, and junior accessory dwelling units, JADUs, in compliance with recent changes to state legislation.
Do I have a second? I'll second it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. All right. Time for informational reports from committees. Hold on just a second. I'm going to make a note for myself. Informational reports from committees and upcoming meeting schedule. Transplant Committee, Vice Chair Brandt.
Last meeting was canceled, actually.
Okay. Design Review Subcommittee, Commissioners Johnson and Jones.
We have not met.
Land Use and Development Committee, that's me, and I believe we've met very rarely last year for some reason, but we do have one coming up. It normally would have fallen yesterday on Monday, but that was Martin Luther King Day, so if there's going to be one, it'll be next Monday. And the Brentwood Municipal Code Review Committee.
Haven't met.
All right. And moving on to G1, request for future, well, actually moving into request for future agenda items, G1, new requests. Do we have any future agenda item requests?
Yeah, a couple. The first one is, have we established a running list for our city's, or at least I'll call it council's opinion on current legislation, whether it's actively being chosen, and particularly land use related because we're planning, but it would be great to get a sense of what that stance looks like, and maybe craft that through a very creative conversation that highlights the challenges that are incongruencies that cities like Brentwood have with said laws, or maybe the ones where it greatly influences us in a positive way, just so that we have a clear 95 Theses. I'm making a lot of biblical references today, apologize, on the door as far as what works and what doesn't. So yeah, I that's the first one. Did you get that?
Kinda. Yeah, I was gonna ask to clarify. So you're talking about changes to legislation that occurred last year that went into effect, say January 1. Like which ones sort of affect the city from a land use perspective, or?
Well, like what do we have does our city carry an official position on those particular bills? I know some cities you were probably referring to Huntington Beach, but they're a bit more aggressive when it comes to these kinds of comments. And so I wasn't sure. It'd be interesting for us to, at least as a homework exercise, to kind of go through them and propose a stance. Maybe council has some ideas on how to lean on certain ones that maybe they feel more passionate about. And, if there's other cities that share that same sentiment, they will know that they're not alone.
So, yeah, would you be looking for, sometimes when the commission brings up these future agenda item requests, I try to figure out if it would be better served for everybody to bring like a formal item back, or if there's something I can simply report back to the commission, say in a group email format, like a informational item that might lead to more discussion. So I'm trying to figure out, is this something that you want to bring back to a future meeting to actually discuss, or is it something we can kind of research and get back to you with here's what we have to date, and then maybe that informs you how to move forward? Does that make sense?
Is it possible to have that summarized somehow? Because I haven't done all the necessary research to make a meaningful opinion on everything, but if there could be some kind of summarized list of those mandates / legislation, that way we actually get our eyes on it. I'm sure I could dig them all up, but for the sake of simplicity, maybe that could be a little bit easier. And then, given it, we all review it independently. If we then were to meet at a later date to then discuss what's important, what's not, maybe, and then we whittle that down to, I'm just speaking from theoretically here, we whittle it down from 35 bills to 5. And we say, these are the ones that we feel most passionate about and we believe the city should carry an official position on. And we make that recommendation to council from a land use perspective. That just gives us a bit more of at least as a commission, I feel like our role here, and I don't want to speak for everybody here, is we serve as an extension of council in order to make meaningful recommendations when it comes to land use, because they can always pull whatever item that comes before us. But it is important that we do our due diligence to review this and come up with opinions that are meaningful, but not only reactive, but proactive. So I see, at least in this case, proactive responses would be us essentially going through all of these and making we got to get the gears turning with the folks that live above us. And so this would be the first step.
So I don't want to get in too deep of a discussion since you're just bringing it up tonight, but I can tell you that as a matter of course at the staff level, we don't take stances on individual bills. I mean, there are some that come up that I know in the past we've written letters of either opposition or support, but we don't do it on every bill. I don't even know how many were passed last year. It's probably an insane amount. But I can do some research in terms of what we've done historically, including last year, and send that to you sort of as a starter. And then if we want to have a further discussion, we can bring it back as a future agenda item.
That would be a great
that work?
start, I think.
Okay.
Like I said, this is very early on, so I've got a lot of reading and such to do, but I would like to see the next step taking place. So that's all.
Perfect.
Not to be contributing discussion, because we're not in discussion on this item, but I just want to point out for the benefit of staff and for the person making the motion, that I believe Cal Cities every year creates a summary list of all the new legislation after it passes, and that might be a resource that either staff or Vice Chair Brand could avail themselves of. Because I do think it's interesting.
And I'll start with that with the full commission, and then you can take that information and get back to me in terms of how you'd like to proceed with it.
Yeah,
Sound
that
okay?
sounds perfect. Yeah. And then the next one, obviously, we've kind of talked about for 45 minutes now, is can we get some kind of process going to identify ordinance opportunities for us with respect to the recent changes that were just approved today, or seemingly they stay approved? I think my extensive discussion kind of gives enough context to understand what I'm getting at, or I'd be happy to provide more.
Yeah, so this is a little tricky because you're talking about the ADU ordinance that just got recommended for approval, right? You're kind of talking about coming back and looking at ways to tweak that potentially?
No, not necessarily that. I know that we have some options that can be exercised supposedly, and I just like to know what all of those are. I mean, I identified some I think are accurate, some maybe not so much, but I would just like to see what those opportunities are. And I don't know if staff can give us a recommendation based off of those things, based off of what you find as being potentially available. So I'll give an example. When we reviewed the ODS, Objective Design Standards for people listening, staff, it sounded like I heard staff give us a lot of options and say, we tried this, but this doesn't work because X, Y, and Z. We may have gone this direction, but we have to keep it within this route. Like, it's almost like a guidebook where we're choosing our route in a sense. And I would guess that we would need to, how do I say this? I think we should look at the recent and potentially upcoming ADU legislation and just see what options that we have as a municipality. What levers can we pull with respect to at the local level? What can we do? And if that's a no, sure. But in all that I have read, I can't honestly believe it's a no.
Okay, and similar to the last item, would you be okay with me going back with select city staff and kind of providing that to you, again, like in an email format to the full commission, kind of reporting back, and then you can say, hey, I'd like to drill down on this further, or that's good for now, because again, we're probably going to be faced with, I don't know how many, but I'll say a series of bills this year that will then become effective next January 1st as they further kind of tweak and refine state law for ADUs. So maybe that's the opportunity where we can kind of do that additional research you're kind of looking for. It's tricky, right? Because we're at the staff level, we're trying to make sure that the ordinance we're crafting and presenting to both the Planning Commission and the City Council is going to pass muster, right? We're not like trying to handcuff ourselves, so to speak, but we're also not, we don't want to ignore what the state is doing because they're going to kick it back to us, right? Which is what I mentioned earlier. So it's a very delicate balance that we're trying to strike. And we don't always like, you know, as professional planners, what the state is telling us to do, but we're in a very difficult position as well. So it's hard. But would that be okay with that item as well, to kind of report back to you and then have you kind of run with it at that point, or?
I think that'd be a great start.
Okay.
And similar to the last item, I think there's a lot more digging to be done. I mean, we know this item was coming for a while, but nonetheless, I would like to do more research, and I would invite this commission to do the same. So whenever that report reaches our inbox, you know, I'll definitely be reading it, and I look forward to a future discussion around it.
May I offer a friendly amendment?
Sure.
I just want to frame this in the sense that as we look through these things, let's look for things that, you know, I was talking about unintended consequences before. Let's look for things that are causing consequences that are adverse to the city in either the opinion of staff or the Planning Commission or City Council for that matter. Just so that some things are more burdensome than others. I think Sarah was mentioning the 15-day review of the application, not so burdensome, but there might be other things so that, so you're not just going through just kind of trying to see everything, but if there are things that are, you know, less than ideal for us, things that we would change if we could, let's have a look at those things, like maybe the priority should be the highest for the things that are causing the most pain, and then see if we can do something about that. Is that kind of where you were going with it?
Yeah, I know we're not trying to get into too much discussion right now. I think it's more of a vulnerability search, and you know, we can identify in our own. And I think our argument is that much stronger when it comes to, you know, and really, frankly, one of the ways that I work and one of the ways that I think is that the sheer review of this content and looking at the documents that we look at, it tends to coax out these opportunities that weren't first available to us. And so I think doing these reviews is as mundane as they might seem, are valuable to us because as many of us have seen a movie or read a book for the second or third time, you're like, oh, I missed that part, or I didn't put those two together. So it's, I don't know, maybe it's a homework assignment for the city of Brentwood. I hate to call it that, but nonetheless, I think it's a good activity for us, so yeah.
Okay, thank you so much.
That's all I got, thanks.
I have one. I'm kind of going in a completely different direction. I'm thinking about committee reassignments are coming up pretty soon after we after the City Council selects the new commissioners. And I'm wondering if it wouldn't be a good idea for us, at least on certain committees, to have an alternate person to be on the committee. I know a couple of times the design review committee's only got 2 members on it. It's on a Thursday morning at 10. Pretty much everybody here, except me, has a job. And that was true of me not too long ago. And so it can be difficult to make it. And you know, I actually brought this up as a public comment because it just drifted into my mind at the last City Council meeting when they were talking about committee assignments. And Councilmember Pearson made a good point that if things were discussed, you know, across multiple meetings, then it could be a Brown Act problem. But we do have committees where things get resolved in one meeting. So I don't know. I see a discussion with council, so maybe it's not something that's permitted.
Sorry, no, I don't know if it rises to the level of a future agenda item necessarily, but we do have that as an annual item, as you mentioned. We'll talk after this meeting about how to do that. We don't really see a problem at this point with doing it that way, and we'll just structure it accordingly on the agenda.
Okay,
But
that's fine.
I don't think we need to come back for another discussion about it necessarily.
Yeah, so we'll
that-
just talk about it when we do the
Yeah.
assignments.
Yeah.
Excellent, thank you. That was all I had. Any others for future new requests? All right, with that, I need one more motion.
Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you so much to everybody tonight. We kept you kind of long, so thank you.
Please make sure your mics are turned off. Otherwise, they're still hot.